or you don't even know how to find an expert that's going to help you, your chances of success are almost zero. And it's exactly where the system wants you.
Welcome. Thanks for being here. Let's talk about the new book. First of all, as I was saying to Wade before, it's super impressive, like mind-blowing. When I first got it, I was like, holy shit. Like, you guys, it seems like you put years and years of work into it. It's like a college course, like a reference guide. And then what I liked at the beginning was the story, which I kind of knew, but I didn't, about how you had completely opposite diets. You were vegetarian, you were not. Let's just go into the whole story about it.
Yeah. So I started doing ketogenic diets when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
So I'm 46, so 30 years. I came home from school one day. My uncle told me I was fat. So I decided, okay, I got to do something. Got on the Atkins diet. It was the first Atkins craze. Went from 190 to 147 in 6 months. So that was my first transformation experience, which was great. And then fast forward a few years, Wade and I met, and Wade decided to do a plant-based diet. And we were both really successful as trainers with our clients. And we were both zealots. I thought everybody should be on a ketogenic diet.
Right.
And then I started getting some clients that it didn't really work for them. I remember one client, his skin turned gray, and people were telling him, like, you look worse than before. So that was my first failure with the keto diet. And then Wade and I started arguing for a very, very long time about which diet was better. But as we were arguing, we were also finding common ground and finding what we call like universal diet optimizers or nutrition optimizers. So Wade, maybe talk a little bit about your journey.
And just tell me how you guys met.
Well, technically, we sort of met in 97, by the way, which is the greatest year ever.
Why is
that's an inside joke, but there's a long story behind that. But 97 was the greatest year ever.
Okay.
We met, we were competing in the same bodybuilding contest in New Brunswick. He was a junior and I was a heavyweight. So that was where he first saw me. And then about 3 years after that, I used to, and I still do, I go home every year for Christmas time to be with my family. And Matt was a personal trainer in Moncton. Now, if you don't know where Moncton is, it's a little tiny town, next in the province next to Maine. It's a drive-through province. Nobody goes there. It's just it's an economically depressed part of the world.
Okay. And
my mom was actually training at the gym, and then Matt made the connection that was my mom, and said he wanted to connect when I came down at the holidays.
But Wade's mom's the sweetest. So.
And I was so impressed that he had built this extensive personal training business in a town where no one would pay for personal training.
Right.
And so I was curious as to what he was doing. He was into marketing. He was already back then, he was filming, exercise courses and stuff. He was like light years ahead of where everybody was. And I was like, what's going on? And then we struck up a friendship.
Hold on, because I like to get all the details here. Can you go into that a little bit? Like how did you know all that stuff? How were you light years ahead of everybody?
Yeah, I got obsessed with business and marketing in my early 20s.
Okay.
So I started buying courses and things like that. But the game plan was always to build a health-related business. Got my degree in kinesiology. And yeah, as Wade said, I built probably the first successful personal training business in Moncton.
That's crazy. What were some of the early courses you were buying?
Dan Kennedy's, Ted Nicholas, Frank R. Wallace, just anything that was, could be helpful. I would buy it, and it was just voracious. A lot of Joe Sugarman's book, which, Psychological Triggers, I remember was such a great book. God bless his soul. But yeah, so anyway, when I met, and my game plan at the time, which ended up failing, was creating a personalized diet and fitness website. So I hired these coders, when we paid them $50,000, and then they went out of business. This is in like 2000.
2000.
Yeah, 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was what I was doing. And I had filmed like hundreds of exercise videos I was going to put on the site and build algorithms, but it never manifested. So
but you were really ahead of your time with doing that at that point, right? No one was really doing that.
Which, the reason Wade and I actually got into business, Wade was winning national natural bodybuilding championships as a plant-based guy. And I had already, as I mentioned earlier, I had a skincare business and a couple of other things that were working online. And I thought, well, from a marketing perspective, it's weird enough that it might work.
Yeah.
So we put together a product called Freaky Big Naturally, and it was successful right out of the gate, and the rest is history.
So, sorry, I had to get the details on that. So then continue the story.
Yeah, so we met, and I encouraged him to come out to Vancouver where I was, because it was really clear to me, with someone with that type of skill set in that type of environment, if they were put into the right environment, we're going to be extremely successful. And that's actually a principle in the book, Environment is Stronger Than Will.
Yeah.
I learned something from Paramahansa Yogananda about putting yourself in the right environment. And so the next year, 6-7 months later, he came out to the West Coast and, you know, started getting into the same gym that I was and setting up personal training clients. And then a couple years later, after I competed at the Mr. Universe contest, he said, hey, let's do this course. And the funny part about that was, he's like, yeah, I'm making money online selling courses. And I said to him, dude, I don't know anybody making money online. That sounds crazy. I don't even own a computer. So wow. I didn't know if I should believe him, right. And he wasn't sure if he should believe me. I was using internet cafes. He was making money. So we thought that was a good genesis to start a book.
Yeah.
So I think from the genesis of our relationship, other than being from the same part of the world, we've always had this unique relationship, kind of like a brotherhood, where there's so much common elements, but it's like we're alter egos of the same expression. So our biggest challenges and our biggest opportunities have lied within the relationship that we've had, and we've had a lot of success with that. And frankly, I don't think we could have wrote this book if we didn't have Dietary Philosophies, and the friendship and quest for excellence was where we bond to support the communication back and forth, because it's so easy to entrench yourself in an ideology, right, and then surround yourself with an echo chamber of supporters. And then the real gains, you start losing the reason you started in the first place, which is to produce some sort of extraordinary result, you know, whether that's fitness or cognitive health or longevity or lose weight or gain muscle. Those were always the objectives. So those are universal goal objectives that shouldn't be limited by some sort of dietary paradigm. The goal is the outcome. These are just frameworks to get there, and there's a lot of different ways that you can climb the mountain. That's what we try to illustrate in the book.
Yeah. So at the beginning, you were kind of like, how could you possibly build that physique on a plant-based diet?
No, I knew it was possible because he did it.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
so
you still had to be challenging it a bit, right?
I was just challenging. Again, I just believed that everybody should be on a keto diet.
Yeah.
That's what I believed. But, you know, Wade and I couldn't really deny each other's results, not just with ourselves, but with our clients. By the way, what got me into personal training was helping my best friend lose 191 pounds in 18 months. I was 19 years old, and just seeing that whole transformation, not just physically, but he literally went from being a virgin to married a couple years later. It was just so impactful for me that I'm like, okay, I want to do this. But yeah, Wade and I always achieved phenomenal results with our clients. I know some of Wade's clients won transformation contests, and I worked with some pro athletes, and, you know, we were just really good at our craft, but we were using very different strategies, and they both worked. So it's hard to deny that.
Yeah. One thing I think was important to bring up, and a lot of people misidentify with it, even early on with my clients, I didn't expect them to be plant-based people.
That's what I was going to ask you.
I always addressed them where they were, what was right for their social and lifestyle culture, and how we could best support them with the tools that we had without varying their life so much that it became a chore.
Yeah.
And I always believe in gradual steps. You know, just keep replacing bad things with good things, and eventually all the bad things are gone.
Yeah.
And it's a continuous refinement process that you never actually find the end. And I think that's the earmarks of a long-term strategy. There's no end game to its extent.
Yeah.
The process is the end game.
Right. So I think this is your third appearance on the podcast.
I think
Third
so.
or fourth?
Yeah.
So for those who haven't heard the previous appearances, how did you get into a plant-based diet and why?
Great questions. Essentially, it was an experiment. So after 1998, I left traditional bodybuilding because I had realized it become a drug cult. In other words, it wasn't just how well your physical genetics was, it was how well your internal genetics were to survive the massive amount of drugs it took to compete at the world championship. At that point, Dorian Yates was passing the torch to Ronnie Coleman. And I got really clear. It didn't really matter whatever I could possibly do. There was no chance in hell that I would ever beat Ronnie Coleman. Okay, we are just two different humans, and it's not happening.
Yeah.
So I left that, and I went through partying phase a little bit with him. We talked a little bit about that before, and that was essentially me processing the loss of a dream. And then I got into Eastern philosophy and spirituality, and I read a book called The Holy Science. And inside that book, it talked about your teeth formation, digestive canal, the nervous system response when exposed to, animal flesh versus plants, and a comparison between omnivores, herbivores, and carnivores, and the suggestion that one could have a great diet as a plant-based person, which was a radical, like this was punching me in the head.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was a hardcore bodybuilder, like 1 gram per pound of body. I grew up hunting and fishing. I had a gun at 14 and a license. Like this is the world I came from. And I realized my own bias. I was like, okay, well, here's a guy that's made a really good scientific argument. I'll do it a 2-week experiment. Try being on plants. Now, my fear was, I'm going to dry up and blow away. I'm going to waste away.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's how deep the indoctrination is.
Yeah.
I didn't. So I said, okay, I'll try 2 more weeks.
Yeah.
And I went a month, and I didn't all dry up and blow away. And I was like, all right, let me do another month. And at the end of 2 months, for me, I just felt so good that I was like, I guess I just will stop eating meat. It's the most shocking thing that ever happened to myself. And so I'm not a vigilante vegetarian or vigilante vegan. I'm not advocating that everybody needs to do this. But inside of that experiment, I became so clear about the programming that happens around diets, because now I had a little bit of evidence that, hey, I wasn't going to dry and blow away. So then the next question became, well, can you do a bodybuilding contest? Right? Because everyone said, you can't do a bodybuilding contest as a plant-based guy. And I went, well, maybe I can't, but how many people have actually tried that? How many people have gone there? And the other key element to that was I determined I was going to do this without using anabolic agents, because one of my big pet peeves is I would see, you still see it today with like Hollywood transformation people, and they say, the diet that X star did to get shredded or gain 50 pounds of muscle in 6 months.
Right.
And I go,
So
what a disservice to the population, because they're not sharing the drugs that person's using. I'm not against the drugs. What I'm against is not communicating what's underneath the surface to people so people can make an accurate and honest assessment of something. So I decided I'd do a plant-based diet. And I would compete in contests without any anabolic agents, so I had no augmentation to the diet. Because if I'm increasing protein synthesis on a plant-based diet, is it the steroids, or is it the the plant-based diet that's working? And it took me, I did my first run in a couple years, went to the Mr. Universe, won the national championships, went to the Universe, gained 42 pounds of fat and water after that, because the way I was doing it, and I had the best coach in the world, was really unhealthy. I was trying to put a meeting mentality to it. And though I achieved the physical aesthetic idea, I felt like garbage. And then triggered this whole metabolic meltdown, which, thankfully that happened. It sucked at the time.
Yeah.
But that led me into the, looking at digestive health, looking at reverse dieting, some of the concepts that we talk about inside of the book. And that became, that failure became a radical opportunity. It took me 4 years to figure out all the optimal sides on a muscle building diet for plant-based. And I was able to go back to the world championships, and I did the next time on a raw food diet.
Wow. So let me just ask you then, in that 4 years, if it takes you 4 years to figure it out, do you ever just go, oh, just let me go back to the way I used to eat? I knew how to do that. That was easier.
Yeah, of course.
Why'd you stick with the plant-based?
Yeah, because I was really passionate about exposing cognitive biases inside the industry. Matt talks about this a lot with me about, what's your emotional, psychological makeup. I'm a rebel contrarian. And I always say,
contrarian.
Yeah, so it's kind of, so it's like, I get excited when I hear something and there's a part of me says, well, let me test out if that's true. So, a lot of experts will say, and I see them on stages, I see them and think, you can't build muscle on a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true.
Right.
You can't be a world-class athlete on a plant-based diet. Well, that's not true because I can give you examples. It's uncommon.
Yes.
And it may not be optimal for most people, but to say it's not possible, I think, is a disservice. So I'm like, what would make it possible? Those type of challenges excited me. And for me, I feel really good on a plant-based diet.
Yeah.
So I've like, well, let's keep going down that. And I also saw a lot of people doing plant-based diets incorrectly and creating problems. And I wanted to take it upon myself to provide an array of tools for people in the plant-based community to do plant-based properly as opposed to incorrectly. I was really motivated about that because I went into all the communities and you find all the plant-based people and we talk about the diet cults and, some of them are pretty heavy in the plant-based world. And I would see well-meaning people make classic cult-like dynamic mistakes, even in the face of evidence that's not supporting their cause, but they're so indoctrinated they don't want to let go of that identity with a diet. And we're trying to smash that for people's benefit in the book.
Yeah. Do you ever, to this day, do you still think, I know if Wade had a ribeye, I'd feel way better?
No, I think he's done a great job, again, patching deficiencies. So one of the things we talk about in the book is every diet works for a while. Right. Why is that? Well, first, it works because if you go from a standard American diet where people are, of course, over-consuming calories, under-consuming protein, and you shift over to a higher protein diet that has lower calories, maybe higher fiber, more nutrients, you're going to feel awesome.
There's always that honeymoon phase of like 6 to 18 months, no matter what the change is.
You're going to feel great, right?
Yeah.
But then why does it stop working after a while? And the reason is nutrient deficiencies. That's a big one. And also potentially food sensitivities or allergies or toxicities. So depending on your genetics, which is a really important piece of the puzzle that, again, when Wade and I started, it didn't really exist. It's a relatively new science called nutrigenomics. But now you can do a DNA diet kit and get incredible insights that truly help you optimize not just your food intake, but your supplements. So we're going to be releasing one soon because, again, the book's just the beginning for us. Like, we are absolutely committed to transforming the world of nutrition. So we got an app that's out. It's called the Ultimate Nutrition app. We got the book. We got a video course. We got the diet DNA app kit coming out. All of these things help people make better decisions. But I mean, obviously Wade does blood work. He's done nutrigenomics, and he's, using all of these tools to optimize his diet. So again, as Wade mentioned earlier, the process of testing, looking at your biomarkers, and then making adjustments is really the most important thing. And Brian Johnson's gone viral the last few months in the health space, and I think he's a great example of, it's not about following his.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, well, he's the $2 million guy. He actually lives nearby, and he's pushing anti-aging to a new dimension.
Okay, meaning what?
Well, he's playing the anti-aging game, and he's got a team of doctors, and he's got a lot of money, so he's spending a lot of money and doing all kinds of crazy things. But the process is, and something we advocate in the book, is create a hypothesis, test, and then make adjustments. And that's that feedback loop that allows you to get better and better. And, Way's doing that, I'm doing that. And anybody doing that's going to get good results over time.
Yeah. So how do people, like, you've gotten in great shape and had amazing success on one diet, and the opposite extreme diet, you've done the same thing. So it's no wonder people are like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to eat? How do you help them kind of navigate through that confusion?
Well, inside of the book, we identify 5 different objectives or goals that you can go on. So is your goal muscle building? Is your goal fat loss? Is it cognitive health? Is it living a long time? Is it being a great athlete? That goal is going to set one set of direction. The number 2 thing...
Just to interject, do you think it's ideal to prioritize one of those goals at a time?
I do believe so.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think it's, prioritizing longevity as a teenager,
right,
probably a poor choice.
Yeah.
You probably want to put on as much muscle as you possibly can, because essentially that's going to contribute to longevity down the road anyways. And that's the best time to put on that. Same thing as becoming an athlete. If you're building those neurological pathways early as a young athlete, as a young person, those are going to deliver, incredible rewards the course of your life. I mean, as anyone that's trained, if you've trained someone who was an athlete when they were a kid, even they were in their 50s, and they pick things up much faster than someone who's never been an athlete in their while and just don't have those neural pathways. It's a lot harder for that person. So, where you are in your life, your goal, your objective. So, there's aesthetics, performance, and health are 3 objectives we talk about in Bioptimizers. Most people get attracted to aesthetics. They see the picture of the hot guy and the hot girl on the cover and like, I want to be one of those. And then, you get into performance, and that's either relative to a sport or it's relative to your life. You're a mom with 3 kids and, a job and or you're a father who's, putting in 80 hours a week to support his family, and he's got to keep his brain going and while, trying to keep his waistline in check so he doesn't, take a jammer before his kids get to high school. And then as you get older, it almost always starts going to health. As things start to break down, and you get those little, things like, oh man, I got to really take care of my health. So we identify those, and then your genetics. And then ultimately, it's crafting the lifestyle that is fluid enough that you can flow through the different phases, stages, and goals within your life virtually seamlessly, and that you can select the right tools, the right supplements, the right whatever it is that you need in order to make that transition, because you're not 100% married to any single diet, any single strategy. You're married to your objective.
Right.
And that allows you to be more fluid. So
I love that.
The start of the book, Matt brings up Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was saying, like, forget all styles. I just want the most effective. And everything else I'm just going to abandon.
Yep.
And he was essentially the godfather of mixed martial arts. And so most people would say any single martial arts discipline trying to compete against just an average MMA guy is going to get destroyed.
Yep.
Because the sophistication of that fluidity is so much better. And we believe that we've demonstrated ways for you to be successful on any one of those diets with any one of those goals, regardless of where your genetics. Now, some will be better than others, but you'll be able to quickly determine that.
Yeah. And give me, like, how would someone know? Obviously, Wade explained you detail, but like, let's say someone does 90 days on the exact diet that Wade's on, or the exact diet that you're on, and then at the end, what are they assessing, and how do you know, should I stick with this? What should I try next?
First of all, let's just break down nutrition on a 30,000 foot view.
Yeah.
First, we got calories, which matter.
Yes.
Matter a lot. There's 2 camps in that world. There's the calories in, calories out camp, which is true, but it's not that useful for most people. Like if you just tell somebody, hey, you got to burn more energy than you're consuming. Okay. Makes sense, but can they really apply that? It's not really that practical. Then you got another camp on the calories in, calories out, where they want to believe in magic. there's hormones. Okay, the insulin theory of obesity or the cortisol theory of obesity. I mean, there's just somebody spewing out some nonsense every few months on social media. Now, both camps are right in the sense that hormones increase metabolism. So if you're more anabolic, you are going to burn more energy. So it's increasing your calories out. Anyways, let's just wrap up on the calorie side. Then you got macronutrients, which anybody who's been in bodybuilding knows it's where you transform your physique, right? I mean,
now, let me just interject there because
absolutely.
there is the if it fits your macros, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is silly because if you're eating Pop-Tarts and fast food versus if you're eating a grass-fed steak and sweet potatoes, I'm willing to bet all my money that you're going to look and feel different at the end of 12 weeks.
Maybe, maybe not. We'll get into that. That's a great that's a great debate.
All right.
I mean, if it fits your macros has been arguably the most successful diet of all time.
Yeah.
In terms of transforming your body composition.
Yeah.
Right? Getting ripped or building lean muscle mass. I mean, it just works.
Yeah.
So
you can't feel great though if you did it forever.
Well,
if you're eating fake foods and sucralose all day.
Well, again, we can get into the particulars.
Okay.
If you're in a calorie surplus and you're eating the wrong foods, it can be problematic. However, and we cover this in the book, if you're in a calorie deficit and you're following if it fits your macros, and it was the guy that did the Twinkie Oreos Cheez-It diet, his biomarkers got better. And he was eating just junk food, but he was in a calorie deficit. Recently, maybe a month ago, a guy went viral because he lost a bunch of weight. His biomarkers got better. He was literally eating McDonald's every day.
Yeah.
So again, there's a lot of people that will basically ignore that, but it's true. If you're in a calorie deficit, your health's going to get better.
Yeah.
And if you're in a calorie surplus, even though you're eating better foods, your biomarkers will get worse.
Well, I think just to add to that, though, there's an optimal calorie deficit. So now we have the other side of extreme dieters, which are in a hyper-calorie deficit. So they produce really rapid results very quickly in a diet. And there's some medically assisted ones that I think these doctors should be locked up for what they've done to people's metabolisms. And they get into this restrictive eating pattern to get, and the initial results are they are improving their blood markers. They are improving their body fat. They are improving their blood sugar. But is that sustainable over the long term?
Right.
And I think where the common ground between if it fits your macros versus feeling your best versus not doing anything.
Yeah.
Okay. So like all of us, I think it's a journey. I didn't figure this all out at first. I remember following, the classic, we have the old stories from the bodybuilding diets and some of the crazy things we did back in the 80s and 90s on bodybuilding because they were nuts.
Yeah.
Everybody was eating raw eggs when Rocky Balboa was out. Then everybody was eating the Hulk. You remember the 2000, the Weeder, the 2000 calorie,
Mega Mass,
Mega Mass and all that. And then, then came the metrics world, and then came the EAS world, and Body for Life, and that was a revolutionary aspect in the industry. So there's key elements in the rise and fall of these kind of dietary cults, and what we try to do is be as agnostic as possible, and say let's not get into any dogmatic belief systems. This is the only way. As is, okay. How can this work? Is this optimal? How long can it work? And what are the problems or challenges? And what are the opportunities within all of these strategies to allow a person to kind of continuously select? So in this case, I started out on a regular meat and potatoes type of diet. I switched to a low-fat bodybuilding style diet for many years. Then I went into the under Scott Abelkamp, which it was an extreme if it fits your macros. So for 11 months I did as a plant-based guy, but there was no plant-based, so I was a lacto vegetarian. I basically took whey protein and I was using rice cakes as my carb source. He liked the high glucose spike to drive the amino acids into the tissue. So he would use really, really simple refined carbs, white rice, potatoes, things like that.
Was that like part of the spike diet where you jack up the calories?
No, well, he does that once a week later on when you got more sophisticated. But he really would manipulate this because he wanted everything to digest really quickly in your digestion, like just vaporize and go. But I felt after, I looked great and felt terrible, to kind of echo what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it was a fit your macros. I looked great cosmetically, but I didn't feel good. And then when I left,
I've gone through phases like that where I'm like, I'm getting leaner than ever, but I feel terrible.
Correct. And then from there, I moved to, plant-based diet. Then I went to a raw food diet. And then out of a raw food diet, I just became a lot more flexible outside of that, on a plant-based. So as I say, I'll eat dairy or eggs recreationally.
Yeah.
So every now and then I'll go out and have a pizza with my friends. I'm not worried about it. I'll have, I'm out on the road or whatever, and there's not much to eat. So in the morning, I'm like, I need a good breakfast today. I've been traveling and stuff. I'm going to have a, 3-egg omelet or something. And I got no issues
negatively,
with it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, does it affect you? Like, do you wake up feeling worse the next day because you're not used to it?
Well, not so much because, we've built probably the greatest suite of digestive health products out there, not to, shamelessly plug them. But we could probably digest any type of food that you could possibly consume. God knows we've tried, and with a lot of success. Because again, at the end of the day, even if you're on the best diet, if you've got digestive health weaknesses, and most people do, they're not going to get everything they could out of a diet if they don't optimize their digestion. And it's one of the pieces on the pyramid of nutritional decisions that we put forth in the book.
Yeah.
I just want to wrap up on the nutrition piece because you both kind of touched on a little bit. In the last piece, we got calories, macronutrients, but we got micronutrients.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of the if it fits your macro zealots and cult fall apart over time.
Yeah.
Because you can easily run into nutrient deficiencies if
well,
you're just eating
on the diet
food.
Wade just talked about, if he's eating whey protein and rice cakes, he's going to be deficient.
Yeah, it was probably deficient in half his
on everything.
Yeah.
I felt deficient in everything.
Right.
And again, Wade, competed again in the future after that experience and optimized his micronutrients and felt completely different. So I think micronutrients are absolutely huge. And I think, we've experienced that with magnesium, going from burnt out to feeling incredible by just getting our magnesium from deficient to quote unquote normal to optimized. This is also where nutrigenomics matter. So for an example, not that long ago, I got some genetic data. I've got bad genetics for selenium, bad genetics for zinc, and I'm deficient. I'm eating 2-3 Brazil nuts a day. It's still not enough. I'm not getting enough selenium. So those are the kind of things that I think long-term, when we're talking about longevity, make a huge difference. Because in our lab, we test cofactors all the time. And I think cofactors are probably one of the most underrated aspects of nutrition. So we can, for example, we just re-released Mastizymes. It's a new version, rebuilt it from scratch. We added some micro amount of vitamin D. It increased the proteolytic activity. It's non-dose dependent. So within our bodies, if we don't have the right amount of nutrients, all this cofactor magic that's happening biologically is going to get compromised. So we're big advocates of getting all the right, especially minerals and trace minerals, into your body because it makes all the difference in the world.
Let me go back to something you said earlier when you said the higher your calories go, generally your blood work will get worse, something along those lines. But obviously that depends on the situation as well, right? Like if someone's coming off of a chronic diet, right? And then so their libido's shot, their cognitive function is shot, their sleep is shot. Increasing their calories, their blood work will improve.
Correct.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, and I'll cue Wade up here because one of the things that his coach and mentor Scott Abel has said and written about, I think it's a really important point, is he says maybe 5% of the world has genetics to go compete in a bodybuilding or physique show, because a lot of people
without wrecking their metabolism.
Exactly. So Wade, maybe touch on that, because I think Wade obviously has great genetics to do that, but very few people do.
And then I want to get both of your opinions on this. So normally what I'll do is at the beginning of, let's say someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to get lean. I'm not going to do, like you just said, like go extreme diet. I'm actually going to increase their calories a bit. And like, for example, someone, you guys might know, I'm not going to name him. I'm working with him now. He's a doctor. He's well known. And he said, anytime throughout my life, if I go over 100 grams of carbs a day, I blow up. And being a, what'd you say, a renegade contrarian, a rebel contrarian?
Right. Yeah.
I want to prove him wrong. So I go, all right, let's see. And so now we took him gradually from 100 grams of carbs a day to 300, but he didn't gain 1 ounce, which to most people would blow their minds. Like, how am I eating 200 grams of carb extra a day? And I look leaner, I look better. I didn't gain 1 ounce on the scale. And then what I'll do now, I feel like once you get his metabolism optimized, he's much hotter, his body temperature is better, sex drive's better, everything's better. Now I'm going to slowly bring him down. Because, if you start someone at the bottom, where are you going to go once they plateau in 6 weeks, 12 weeks, or something like that? But that blows people's minds, right? Like, how can I eat 300 grams of carbs a day when I was eating 100 and I didn't gain an ounce? Like, how does that even happen?
Well, I think you've identified something too, because you're dealing with a very specific niche of guys. I love reading your emails, for example, because it's speaking to someone at my age.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a lot of 40 and 50-year-old guys, executive guys. They've burnt themselves out on, whatever. They've tried radical interventions usually because they tend to be, hard driving.
Usually their cortisol and adrenaline's through the roof.
Correct.
So it's like, we don't want to be extreme dieting here.
Correct. So, and this is where I think, expertise is really, really important, especially in those early stages of a person's journey. Matt and I have had experts along each one of the parts when we ran into a roadblock or we were trying to overcome a specific obstacle. And frankly, if you haven't figured out your diet by the time you're 40 or 50, you need radical intervention and you need radical supervision.
Yeah.
Because almost everything you intuitively are thinking is wrong.
Right.
And the evidence, you have 40 to 50 years to support that you're wrong, and you just have to accept that you're wrong and submit yourself to the discipline of a master.
Yeah.
And it's kind of why I love reading what you write about, because you're essentially illustrating the journey of what does a successful person need to do. They need to abandon the idea that they know anything and become a beginner, drink tea with the master and follow the tenets of the master, even if they seem completely out of the, out of their, frame of reference. And you do a great job of that. So kudos to that. It's one of the reasons I really resonate, because you're talking about really overcoming how people get confused by their own results. They're confused essentially by what they don't know.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to hold on to something they don't as truth.
Right.
Almost everybody says, I eat healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I kind of smile and say, well, okay, walk me through that.
Yeah. Write it down for a couple weeks and let's see.
Yeah. Like almost everyone believes that.
Yeah.
Because I always ask people, okay, what's your diet? And I eat healthy. And again, it's not that they're lying to themselves directly. I think they think they're eating healthy because they don't really understand what that means, right?
Yeah. So what, like in just general terms, talk about like how people should be eating healthy diets,
Well, again, I think we touched, again, calories, macros, micros.
Yep.
I think you need to, again, if you're overweight, you have excess body fat. If you lose that excess body fat, your health's going to improve.
Yep.
So I think that's a critical thing. I think a lot of people should gain some lean muscle mass. Not that they should go compete or be bodybuilders, but most people would greatly benefit from a health perspective, an aesthetic perspective, adding 5, 10, maybe 15 pounds of lean body mass, right? From a glucose absorption perspective, from a strength perspective, from all these benefits, right? From a macronutrient perspective, again, most people are under eating protein and fiber and over consuming fats and carbs. And it's really that simple because, again, when people just shift the percentage of calories from carbs and fats and increase their protein intake, we know that there's a thermic effect of protein, which means that you're going to absorb less of it. Same thing with fiber, and Wade's become the king of fiber the last couple of years. You're only absorbing 15%. 50% of the fiber that you're consuming, and it gives you satiety and, of course, all these other health benefits. So in terms of just shifting the macros to higher protein, higher fiber, it makes everything else easier, right?
Yeah.
And maybe Wade, talk about the big ass salad, because Wade's been doing this for a long, long time, and I think has been a key strategy, something that almost everybody can do.
Yeah. So I have suboptimal genes for cardiovascular risk as well as satiety. So what does that mean? It means left to my own designs, I will eat myself into a heart attack or stroke. Like that's just the way it is, right? And I have once a week, I have an unrestricted calorie day.
Okay.
And I usually schedule it for the UFC fights because you get the adrenaline and cortisol, and I can clock 1,000, 2,000 calories an hour left on my own desires. Like I can just chips or pizza or whatever, and then excitement and social gatherings. I get a lot out of it. I'm fired up, and I'm just knocking down everything and feeling great.
Sweets too?
Oh yeah, everything.
Yeah.
Because that's another tenet. We believe there's no evil foods.
Right.
Foods become evil when they start taking you away from your dreams. But evil, quote unquote, evil foods can actually, if you like metabolic slingshotting, you can actually leverage those foods to, number one, obliterate psychological and emotional obstacles that are, dysregulating you. And two, you can use those as metabolic enhancers if they're done within the right strategy.
And you wake up looking better the next day.
You wake up looking better the next day. And people are like, how's that even possible? Well, if you understand these principles, you can do that. So for me, when I switched to a plant-based diet, that was initially problematic because it's hard to get enough protein in a plant-based diet. And protein is really great for satiety. And I think that's one of the big aspects of why it's so successful, why bodybuilders eat 4 or 5 small meals a day, with high amounts of protein. And the reason is that you stay full all day.
Yep.
And so if you're full all the time, you're those inadvertent, snack moments that are an extra 500, 600, 800 calories suddenly just become easier to manage. You just don't have those desires. So I was like, okay, well, I can't do that. So what can I do? I can crank the fiber up on my diet. It's great for blood sugar. It's high satiety. It takes a long time to digest fiber. And every afternoon I have before I came over here, I had a salad that would scare most people. It is a massive salad. It's huge. And I really get into it. And when I eat that, I feel satiated for hours and hours and hours. So that genetic predisposition to overeat is dealt with because I'm addressing the suboptimal aspects in my own genetics. Because I know what that is, and I can feel that, and it's great.
What are the fat sources in there?
I use a little bit of olive oil.
Is that it?
That's it.
No avocado or anything?
No, not usually. I mean, sometimes I'll have avocado, but generally, the thing is at home, avocados just don't last that long, and so I'm kind of against buying them. So, my lady has all my tomatoes and all my peppers and all my cucumbers and my lettuce. Everything's all pre-dialed. So as soon as I come upstairs from the studio where I'm working, I come upstairs and it's like handful of salad, handful of peppers, handful of celery, handful of this, some chickpeas on top of that. Take a handful and a half of chickpeas, and then I put a drizzle of oil, a little bit of balsamic vinegar, bunch of salt, and I'm just mowing my way to joy.
Now, some people, if they have gut health issues, raw veggies or a big salad like that would destroy them.
Correct.
What's going on there, and what's kind of the workaround?
Again, there could be a variety of reasons. One, it could be for the plants themselves. They might have an issue there with some sort of dysbiosis in the bacteria cultures have. Or
what
they
do you
may
mean when you say for the like they might be intolerant
they might not,
or allergic
exactly,
to one specific
to one plant or multiple plants. They just can't eat.
Yeah. Okay.
They can't eat plants. Their digestive system is so compromised by this point, and they usually, takes a while to get there, or it might be multi-generational thing. The second thing is they may actually have a sensitivity to some chemical on the vegetables. I mean, the USDA organic allows 50 different chemicals.
Wow.
Okay.
Jesus.
Right. 3, or which is kind of the derivative of the first one, is if they have some sort of dysbiosis in bacteria and a bacteria.
Wait, hold on. We got to pause there. If you get an organic vegetable, it can have 50 different chemicals on it?
Yeah, USDA allows 50 different chemicals on that. I actually have a Kangen machine, and it makes an 11.5 pH, which is really viscous. And one of my cheap thrills in life is to wash organic vegetables in this 11.5. And 11.5 is so slippery, it emulsify oil. And all pesticides and herbicides and fungicides are usually are oil-based, so they don't come off in the water, but they will come off in that 11.5. And about somewhere between 30 and 50% of organic products, you'll see a chemical film coming off those vegetables after that. You go, and then when you taste the vegetable after, it's radically different.
That is crazy.
Yeah, fortunately we have Ear One, and Ear One is exceptional. By the way, that grocery store of, stripping out any weirdness out of any of the produce section of vegetables. One of the reasons I shop there. It's expensive, but it's great.
So if I buy vegetables there, is there zero chemicals on them? Or we don't know?
I have yet to see any violators in my own experimentation.
Wow.
I haven't bought all the vegetables there. I haven't bought everything, so maybe there is one or two, but they're very strong in curating their vegetables. And I remember when things changed at Whole Foods, when they changed hands ownership-wise, and you started seeing like GMO canola oil coming in, and some like them starting to sneak in these other, as I call sneaking these things, and a lot of things started on the organic side of the salad bar started to diminish. So one of the concepts we bring up in the book is mental vigilance. So again, if you're a person that's having problems with eating plants right now, don't eat plants. Let's just take that off the table. Let's find a diet that works. Okay, maybe you're going to do it fits your macros right now.
Okay.
You're going to get that. As you get closer and closer to your goals, and as your body gets healthier and healthier, you may say, hey, I'd like to increase the range of things I can go. Well, that can be single food testing, or you can start getting into some more gut biome tests and see what's going on. Maybe you have a detoxification pathway issue that you're not able to metabolize that food because it's blocking something up. But as you get healthier and more fit, your body can detox whatever that food problem was, and it doesn't cause you any problem. And I've had hundreds of clients that couldn't eat a food at one point in their life, and then a year, 2, 3 years down the road, they're able to have foods they never dreamed possible because the strength of their entire system has improved. And that's the ultimate goal, I think, for everyone.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
I believe that the healthier you are, it should increase your range of choices, not decreases. You're going to have to go through a restrictive period for a while. That's just the price of admission to get things going. But once you get to your, objective goal, at that point, this is when you become like us. You fall in love with the process because you want to start running these experiments, whether it's food experiments, training experiments, biohacking experiments, and you've got a baseline that you can actually measure the efficacy or the efficiency of a variety of things, and that's when you get what's right for you.
Yeah.
You're a world-class expert in yourself. Matt's a world expert in himself. I'm a world expert. And virtually everyone that you listen to as an advocate has become an expert in themselves. The problem is sometimes we forget that this was a 10, 15, 20, 30 years journey up there. And now we've just got the 10 commandments from this point. And that's not relative to Mr. and Mrs. Jones down here at the start of the journey.
Yeah. Can anyone get to that point where they can eat anything, assuming they don't have any, autoimmune issues or anything like that?
Let me touch on leaky gut because that's a big one.
Yeah, huge.
A few years ago, I thought A1 protein was evil. For people that don't know what A1 protein is, it's about 80+% of the cows produce milk that's considered A1 protein. There's a few breeds that produce A2. Other animals produce A2.
And what's the difference? A2 is supposed to be much better, right?
That's the spiel.
Okay.
Now, the truth was at that time, if I consumed A1 protein, I would get an inflammatory response.
Right.
My feet would blow up, feel my joints there was definitely an inflammatory response.
Okay.
But then I fixed my gut. We have a product called Microbiome Breakthrough, and in the lab we found that it is the best product, not just from ours but others, for building a healthy biofilm. So how do you fix your leaky gut? You must produce a healthy biofilm. Most probiotics and most fermented food is transient, meaning that it's going to go through your intestinal tract. It's going to produce some benefits. And I think, one simple tip or tactic everybody can do is eat more fermented foods. It's a good thing, right? Some research done about a year ago where they compared fiber versus fermented foods, and fermented foods actually improve your immune system. So,
now, isn't there some type of gut issue where fermented foods would be no good?
Well, there's SIBO,
okay,
where there's
would be no good.
Overgrowth of certain strains of probiotics. But here's the great news about your gut. It is the most dynamic system in your body, meaning that you can literally shift your gut biome in 48 hours.
Wow.
Because the lifespan of bacteria is about 48 hours. So somebody has SIBO and they fast for 3 days, what's going to happen is a lot of the bacteria is going to die. Your gut's going to dry up, which presents an incredible opportunity to reseed it and to rebuild it right after your fast. And I've been doing a lot of 5-day fasts this year, and the microbiome breakthrough to break the fast has been a game changer. Of course, you can drink bone broth, things like that. They're all beneficial. But a lot of people have leaky gut due to, again, eating maybe the wrong foods or consuming the wrong things. And what happens is there's basically junctions where food particles, undigested food particles, can get inside the bloodstream and could produce inflammatory responses. But my point is, after I fix my gut, and again, it's a dynamic thing, like I could get leaky gut again if I start eating the wrong things or if I fast or all these different conditions. If I consume A1 protein today, I'm fine. So that's what I think Wade was touching upon. Like if you've got a great gut and it's got, healthy strains, and we do a ton of experiments all the time on different types of bacteria, including the bad guys. What you want to do is, again, try to minimize the bad guys and implant the good guys. And that's transformative for most people.
So what you're saying there is interesting, because a lot of, you'll hear that healing your gut takes 30 days or 90 days or something like that. You're saying It can change rapidly.
It's very quick.
Now, what if it's disastrous, right? How long is that?
Well, again, so bacteria, we do these experiments all the time. We put one strain versus another strain. And a lot of strains don't like each other. So they'll literally, one will kill the other. So P301, for an example, which is one of our products, it'll kill E. coli. We knew that because it's undefeated against food poisoning.
Wow. Not
just with us, but like we've never had a report. We get some all the time. People hear our stories and they, travel, get food poisoning. It's amazing. So that'll kill E. coli.
So just for future reference, if you get food poisoning, what do you just load?
10 caps immediately.
Okay.
And then you might have one more projection. Take another 10, and then it's almost always done right there.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a lifesaver several times for us and our clients. Now, again, microbiome breakthrough will kill gram-positive bacteria. Like pneumonia is an example of that. There's a lot of very difficult probiotics to kill. So what you want to do is kill the bad bacteria and then implant good ones. But yeah, it's fast. If you stop eating the wrong things and start implanting the right strains, really in a few days, at least you can be well on your way.
Wow. Now, do you think doing that, taking the supplements, but pairing it with some type of elimination diet for 30 days or whatever it might be is a good idea?
Yeah. So I can speak to that directly. When I had my 42 pounds of fat and water gain, and we met Dr. Michael O'Brien, who started, sharing with us about enzymes and probiotics and gut health and micronutrients and aminos and like a whole different level that we had never heard before as people in the industry, so to speak. I went on, he had a 90-day program, and that involved, taking parasite cleaners. It involved taking, herbal laxatives, massive amounts of enzymes, massive amounts of probiotics, tocotrienols, things like that. And it was profound. I knew that I understood that I had some sort of digestive problems going into it, and that was developed from that extreme diet that I was on. And coming out of that, 6 months later, I had my physique back, but I had a new level of vitality. You kind of alluded to that earlier. So my capacity to absorb and utilize nutrients from the food I was eating was light years of where I was a year before competing at the World Championships.
Wow.
So I was like, okay, there's a difference between like performance in a athletic field versus performance from a health perspective. And they're like, this is what health should feel like.
Yeah.
And they're not independent of each other, but they're sort of made that way now, especially because most of performance sports have been hijacked by pharmaceutical interests. And then the people in the natural health space are really against the pharmaceutical. So they're also in another war, because anything that comes from the pharmaceutical is bad, and the pharmaceutical is like anything that's natural health is bad. So again, that's another war that's going on that we're trying to eliminate. Hey, look, let's be agnostic. I don't know if that works. Let's give it a try. Let's experiment it. Let's give it enough times. But I do believe in severe digestive conditions. If that's been something you've been suffering from, an extended time on an elimination diet is probably going to be required. In any way that you can augment that to accelerate the results, I think is a good idea.
I think one thing we should touch upon quickly is, because I'm sure you got a few people listening that's their goal. If your goal is muscle building, what takes out a lot of pros, including Flex Lewis, a couple of years ago, who was I think the 212 Mr. Olympia, is digestive problems.
Yeah.
And when you start trying to eat a calorie surplus, and Ben Pekulski is a good friend of ours, and I remember having breakfast with him one day, and we were just talking. He's like, eating the amount of food I need to eat is the hardest part of it.
Yeah.
It's not the training. It's not the dieting. It's the off-season eating, because there's so much demand, and that's where you really need to increase proteolytic enzymes. You need more hydrochloric acid. And we know that as we get older, we produce less enzymes, less hydrochloric acid. And there's this advice going out there around, okay, well, if you're getting older, you need to increase your protein intake. But if we really break down what nutrition is, it's taking macronutrients, let's take protein, breaking it down into amino acids and peptides. We need to absorb these amino acids and peptides through the intestinal tract, and then they become assimilated into muscle tissue, neuropeptides, organs, et cetera, et cetera. So the real goal is to break down that protein into aminos, and that's where protease is incredible. And the new Enzymes, we do this experiment called the Bradford.
It's not a point to be taken lightly, because I've experienced this, and plenty of people that have tried to get bigger. They're like, I'm eating 6,000 calories, but I'm in the bathroom the whole day. So it's like, are you getting anything out of that? Are you absorbing that?
Yeah. No, I think Enzymes is a game changer. That's what it was designed for. When we built it, we okay, let's build the strongest protein digesting enzyme we could, and we did. And in the recent tests we're doing, we see that it breaks down protein into a pool of amino acids and peptides in 30 minutes. That includes casein, which is, again, a tougher protein to break down. It's a bigger molecule. So that's a game changer for anybody who's, again, eating a lot of food. And I think the vertical diet by Stan Efferding is a great approach, especially if you're trying to eat a calorie surplus. He avoids FODMAP foods, which produce more digestive challenges, especially if you're eating a lot. He focuses on white rice is his kind of main variable for increasing or decreasing calories, because it's easy to digest. So again, depending on what your goals are, these are all things you need to be mindful of.
Yeah. Two questions, and they're both shameless plugs for the products, but I'm bringing it up. So because a lot of our listeners do use your products. So I want you to address, in the gut health situation, someone's trying to repair their gut health, how much of each of those products, let's say it's me and I don't care, cost is irrelevant, what should I do? And then I'm going to go back to you. If someone's in a mass gaining phase, what should they be taking to really optimize it? Because I'm just someone, and I'm sure you're probably like this too. Like, if I look at the bottle, I go, I'll take double that. I just do that anyway.
Yeah, me too. I'm like that. So I think the magic combination is Enzymes, hydrochloric acid, and P through M as your standard digestive stack, because it's dealing with all levels of the digestive system.
Let me just ask one question there. Are there some people that shouldn't take HCl because their levels are too high, or how do you know that?
Very simple test that people can see if they're HCl is high enough or effective enough is you take a quarter teaspoon of baking soda, mix it in 4 ounces of water, drink it on an empty stomach. If you burp within 5 minutes, you're making enough hydrochloric acid. If you don't, you need hydrochloric acid.
Okay.
The older you are, the generally more likely that you'll need hydrochloric acid. Okay. And the enzymes are in what.
And then one more. If let's say someone's just shotgun approach, right? They're taking HCl. Could it have a negative effect if they already have an adequate amount?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite, in rare cases you would make an overproduction of hydrochloric acid, I guess.
But it's not something to be ultra concerned
if you look
about.
10 tablets or something.
But just to comment on that, like Katrine was a good friend of ours, had me on a protocol once. I was taking 30 capsules a day for 2 months. I had no issues.
Yeah. But
so it's not a risk. It's not a big risk.
Well,
right?
there could potentially be a physiological condition where someone's having a tissue pushing up or a problem within their spine that's creating firing issues on the esophageal sphincter that are independent of the product itself. And so if you're making more hydrochloric acid and you have some structural problem, you could advance that. So there are things outside of the nutrition realm, and I just wanted to be mindful of that for our listeners. But for the most part,
and taking all 3 of those, and are we high dose in those or what?
Yeah, I there's the 3-2-1 in the little packets that we have, which is good for most people. I like about double of that.
Yeah.
I take 5 or 6 enzymes and a hydrochloric acid pill and half a dozen probiotics. Now,
you take that many?
Oh yeah. And then
you're doing that multiple times a day.
Yeah, but I'm very sophisticated now because so in the mornings, right, I have my protein and I take an essential fatty acid from an algae oil that I take because I'm a vegetarian and essential fatty acids are really hard to get, and it's a really good one that this one's put together. So I'll take Capex, which is a ketogenic enzyme that's high in lipase. So it's higher in lipase than mastizymes. So I take that with a few. So I split my mastizymes and Capex there.
Okay.
When I have my salad meal, I don't take the Capex, but I take the mastizymes and I take vegzymes. Okay. If I'm going out, for example, I went out with my girlfriend the other day. We had a veggie burger. I don't normally eat bread, so I added a couple of gluten guardian enzymes before I had that meal with my mastizymes and stuff. So I'm hyper sophisticated because we've got digestive solutions for virtually every diet. And I like to mix and match because I like to feel the different effects and see the effects. And I know that if I take gluten guardian when I'm having that veggie burger, it feels better than if I just have mastizymes alone. It's a definite difference. Same thing as if I take Capex with my fats, I feel that I metabolize it better because I have poor genetics for fat metabolisms. And it's one of the reasons that when he was initially saying, hey, Wade, you need to do the ketogenic diet, when I would start upping my fat intake too high, I'd get fat in my stool. And I explained this to him. And then that's when Matt, which was, he's pretty good at metabolizing fats. He went really deep into understanding, well, why is that not working for Wade? He developed Capex, which has all these lipases in addition to the protease. And when I took that, and I took that same level of fat, no problem.
Wow.
Felt fine. So I was like, oh, okay. So there's enzymatic pathways. And if you don't know your enzymatic pathways, that's why you're probably lean towards one diet and lean away from another, because there's an intuitive awareness that, hey, I don't feel good on that food.
Yeah. Interesting. Wow. And so is it pretty similar if you're on a mass gaining phase, the recommendations?
So again, in terms of like total mastizymes a day, for let's say somebody's eating 4,000 calories a day, which typically is enough, probably about 25 to 40 capsules a day of mastizymes. Now we have a few other products that we always recommend. One is,
so let's say you're eating 4 meals a day. You take 6 capsules somewhere in
6 to 10.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
I would also recommend doing it a couple times a day on an empty stomach. Pre-workout, awesome. Pre-workout like 5 or 10 mastizymes pre-workout is great. And a lot of people will take it later in the day.
What happened? Why pre-workout?
You have more juice.
Really?
I mean, enzymes, we have a theory, and that theory is any unused enzymes get converted into systemic enzymes. And I have reasons why I support that theory. I've seen people overcome a variety of physical conditions
That's what I was going to say. So that would reduce inflammation?
Yeah, well, I think there's there's 25,000 known enzymatic enzymes in the body. And I believe that they're scheduled into families. I think there's proteolytic families, lipolytic families, amylytic pathways, and cellulase, and then there's derivatives of those. And so, for example, I've seen people with skin conditions, you jack up their lipase, the skin conditions go away. I've seen people who have trouble forming neurochemicals for their brain, jack up masszymes, and all of a sudden they start feeling better all the time. Wow. I've seen people with problems with blood sugar adding amylase into their blood sugar, and their blood sugar numbers start going down. So what that's indicating to me is there's things that enzymes are doing over and above than simply digestion. I've seen people with necrosis scars like a ½ inch taking 5 masszymes twice a day on an empty stomach, and literally within minutes that scar would start to itch, and over the course of 9 months that scar was completely flush and back to the skin color.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I do believe, and you can kind of, if you dive into the research about enzymatic, there's a variety of different experts in different disciplines who use mega doses of enzymes to create radical results. I'm not making any claims. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a health thing, but I've seen extraordinary things happen to people. And from that's why I'm such a big advocate of enzymes on the long term. Check out Dr. Edward Howell's Food Enzymes for Health and Longevity, or Enzyme Nutrition. I think some of the insights that he had there, some of the things were disproven later on, but I think some of the insights in there are absolute money and a real value to people in the nutrition industry.
Just to validate what Wade's saying, we'll get back to muscle building. There's a lot of research that was done with boxers and karate athletes with using high doses of proteolytic enzymes to cut recovery time. You can cut recovery time for contusions, black eyes, almost any injury by about 50%. I tore my Achilles. You can see the scar there.
Yeah.
I had to get reconstructive surgery. I was able to reduce by over 40%.
Damn.
That was post-surgery. So I was just hyperdosing masszymes, and of course, using BPC 157, TB 500, and it was awesome. Anyways, but back to muscle building, we have another product called Blood Sugar Breakthrough. And the true background story on that, I mean, there was 2 things happening simultaneously. One, my mother-in-law's got diabetes. She's lost both feet.
Wow.
we take care of her. So that was just impactful. But I've got some friends in the bodybuilding space that were using a lot of different molecules that made their way into Blood Sugar Breakthrough to be as anabolic as possible, because when you're eating a lot of calories and you're eating a lot of carbs, you want to drive that glycogen into the muscle tissue. Back to your example with your client of increasing their carb intake from 100 to 300, we know now that glycolytic pathways and lipolytic pathways are dynamic. What does that mean? Is if you put somebody in a ketogenic diet for, let's say, 6 months, 12 months, and they'd never eat a carb, their ability to consume carbohydrates and utilize it effectively is compromised.
Yeah.
And you can rebuild those, which is what you did with your client, and that's why he's not having problems, right? And I think it's another good reason, if you're on a keto diet, doing carb refeeds every week, which is what I've been doing since I'm a teenager, is a great strategy, because you're not you're rebuilding or maintaining a certain level of ability to burn carbs. But
so how long do you do that refeed for? 24 hours?
Usually 48.
Okay.
36. Saturday morning to Sunday night, and I used to do crazy.
To DePasquale.
Yeah, that's the book that got me on the track. Yeah, I did that.
And is that pretty clean, or do you do a cheat day?
It used to not be clean on any level.
Okay.
It's gotten cleaner and cleaner, and I used to do like 8,000, 10,000 calorie days. I haven't done that in a long time.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun when we did. But back to Blood Sugar Breakthrough. If you take 2 caps, 20 minutes before a meal, again, we have to be careful here due to claims, but it's incredible for blood sugar management. For example, yesterday when I worked out, it took 3 caps. We went to Erewhon. I had some white rice sushi. And I mean, it was one of the best pumps I've had in a while, even though I was completely sleep deprived. So it's quite effective for that. Crosby, I don't know if you know Crosby, he loves it as well. So that's a really good agent.
Crosby Cookies. Yeah,
Okay.
he's a great guy. Great guy.
Yeah. Anyways,
He makes great cookies.
Yeah, it's a
These
great
are shredded.
Really?
Now, the other aspect, and I think we have an incredible suite of products for this, is sleep. If you're trying to build muscle mass, there's so much magic that happens during sleep. We know that the growth hormone response happens during that first phase. So you want to go to bed before you get that cortisol response, that second win. Magnesium breakthrough, 2 caps an hour before bed. We got sleep breakthrough, which again helps optimize your natural melatonin production.
And then you can take both of those.
I take both of those every night.
Okay.
Now we have another product.
What's optimal for sleep in terms of when you should stop eating? Do you have strong opinions on that?
Yes, and again, the research on growth hormone response is very clear. You need at least 3 or 4 hours. If you eat, and again, if you eat a little bit of carbs, in my opinion, probably helps your sleep. If you're eating amino acids like glycine or L-theanate, no problem. But when you're eating something that your body has to work at to digest, it'll wipe out that growth hormone response in that first phase.
And so that could be too many carbs.
Again, just a little bit of fruits or a teaspoon of honey.
Yeah,
helps.
see, that works. So that's been one of the biggest game changers for me. And I only started doing this, honestly, within the last 2 years because I'm just a fat boy by nature. Like, I like to eat at all times. So I'd be eating, an hour before bed.
Yeah.
But now it's consistently 3 hours, and my sleep is dramatically improved just from doing that. But if I do have a humongous pile of white rice, I'll fall asleep, but then I'll be wide awake at 2,
Yeah. Again, it's the dose creates the effect.
Yeah.
But in testosterone production, the majority of it happens during REM. So we have another product called Dream Optimizer. I don't know if you've tried that.
Yes.
I mean, it cranks your REM.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely have more dreams, more vivid dreams.
Yeah.
So I like using that like 3 or 4 days a week. But yeah, you need to optimize your sleep. I mean, that's where the magic happens.
Yeah. You touched on the vertical diet before, and in there, Stan recommends 0.3 to 0.4 grams of fat per pound of body weight, which is generally what I like to do. I find that a lot of people fear carbs, and they're like, oh, I'll get fat if I eat carbs. I got to go on a low-carb diet. But then when I look at what they're eating, it's like a bagel for breakfast and a sandwich for lunch and like a potato for dinner. I was like, it's like 120 grams of carbs. Not really, but you also had 230 grams of fat. So I generally tend to lower people's fat intake first. And they're like, oh, really? And just something simple. Like I had a guy lose 100 pounds and he goes, Jay, I'm a fat Italian. I'm not going to stop eating pasta and meatballs. I go, all right, so let's just do this. Change this sauce because there's too much fat in it. Let's go with a lower fat sauce. And you're eating 80-20 meat for the meatballs. Let's make that 93-7. He lost 100 pounds eating pasta twice a day for lunch and dinner. Yeah. So generally, I think there's a misconception of like carbs versus fat.
I think that the if there is the worst combo ever, it's carbohydrates and fat.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the stack that I think is the easiest one to lose control of your dietary vigilance. Number one, I can recall Matt taking me to Sidecar Donuts.
Oh,
now, I'm not a donut guy.
So
I'm not
good.
a donut guy. I'm not a sweet guy, whatever. And I had been on a restricted diet for an extended period of time because I was trying something, and it was a calorie day. He's like, yeah, let's go to Sidecar. I'm like, what's Sidecar? He's like, it's the craziest donuts ever. I'm like, okay. So we go over there, and they're taking them out, and the heat's on, and they're warm,
Amazing.
and it's hot, and we're talking massive amounts of sugar, massive amounts of fat. I ate my first donut, and it was like a heroin experience.
Right.
I was literally high, and I mean really high.
Yeah.
I was having like body stones thing, like I was out there, and like I was like, okay, I need another one of these things. And like I'm eating another one, and I'm just getting higher and I'm like, has these been drugged? And I was realizing, holy cow, our whole society is actually drugged out from these high sugar, high trans fat foods that are disabling their discernment factor. They're disabling their. It's like, it's like the pothead that doesn't have any energy to do anything, and everybody kind of knows it except the pothead, or the alcoholic that's drunk at the bar every week, but everybody knows it except him and his buddies. It's kind of like we live in a society where that is acceptable, it's normal, and there is a cognitive dissonance that's happening across society, like you said, right there. Yeah, low carb. What is low carb relative to what's going on? You know, it's like, and these are part of the what we call low resolution proclamations that get canonized and paralyze people from having long-term success.
Yeah.
And we're here to try and obliterate those, identify them, obliterate them, transcend them, and that's what the diet book's about.
Yeah.
I want to go back to your question around fat intake, and inside the ketogenic chapter, there's one of the most useful charts in the entire book, again, for anybody who's on a keto diet, which is all the different types of meat and fish you can consume and their protein to fat ratio. Now, once you're fat adapted, so again, if somebody's never done keto before, okay, eat a high fat, 75% fat for maybe 3 months. After 3 months, the best strategy is let's start reducing the fat intake by just choosing leaner cuts, which increases our protein and decreases our net calories. So going from, again, a ribeye to a New York, right, or just whatever the leaner cuts are, it is a really simple strategy. The other point I want to make on fats is, again, my genetics have told me that I don't metabolize saturated fats that well. And that was a light bulb moment for me because my lipids were not that great. My triglycerides were fine, inflammation was fine, but HDL, LDL was, off the optimal zone. So now increasing my olive oil, increasing or decreasing my saturated animal fat intake. So again, these are just nuances that I think are really important as you get deeper and deeper. And, we cover all those in the book.
There seems to be some pushback from a lot of people nowadays in terms of cholesterol numbers, which you just mentioned there.
Correct, yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter as much as we used to think. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think, again, we talk about the video we just saw recently where Mike was breaking down the longevity data around cholesterol, because I think it seems like people that live a long time have higher levels of cholesterol. That seems to be
interesting.
Some of the newer data.
And what was the thing, like cholesterol was a scapegoat for some big pharma sugar or something, or I don't even remember.
If you go way back in the day, I think everybody remembered the Time magazine that had the unhappy face on it, from one of the most iconic figures of the 80s. I actually was friends with a lady who was on the council for the Farmers of America to stop getting the bad name for eggs because it really plummeted egg sales. So she was a lobbyist in Washington. And again, it comes down with these low resolution aspects. Okay, is high cholesterol an absolute guarantee they're going to take a heart attack or a stroke? No, it's one of the indicators in combination of maybe obesity, poor genetics around cardiovascular health, mismanage of blood sugar and inflammation. So there's maybe 5 elements that are actually doing that. But on the soundbite on the TV, they say high cholesterol.
Yeah.
Because they want to strip everything down to this low resolution solution. And how's that working for people? It isn't. Right. People are getting fatter. People are getting unhealthier. The disability adjusted life expectancy in this country is 60 years old. So that means you're going to spend the last 25% of your life sick, on medications, going for surgeries, a compromised level of living. That's the expectation of maybe the greatest amount of information available. So information isn't the problem. Is there sources of excellent examples of people doing virtually every diet strategy? Yeah.
Yep.
So the devil's in the details. And if you're going at your diet and you don't have an expert, or you don't even know how to find an expert that's going to help you, your chances of success are almost zero. And that's exactly where the system wants you. The system wants you zero because then you go into the doctor and guess what? They don't have any training in nutrition. They're not qualified to make any diagnosis or suggestions around nutritional supplementation, but they can give you a drug to lower whatever the low resolution thing is that has a bunch of side effects that when you come back 3 months later with that thing, you're going to need another drug. And then from 3 months later, you're going to need another drug. I mean, the average person in America is on 4 prescription medications, and the average senior citizen is at 17.
What?
17.
Jesus.
So in what universe does taking more and more drugs lead to better health? It's the one they want to avoid.
Right.
That's the universe that exists. You want to avoid that universe. So the multiverse on that that's the one you blow into the pharmaceutical drug world. That's the one you want to just keep blowing through, and get out of that. Was that Doctor? The last Marvel movie, Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
he was kind of blowing through all the different universes. That's you get caught in the pharmaceutical universe. Now, I'm not against pharmaceuticals. I think pharmaceutical drugs have offered a tremendous array of awesome solutions, but as an adjunct to a great diet, a great lifestyle program, I think the right drug at the right time is very much like the right supplement at the right time. But long term, the consequences usually outweigh the benefits. It's a last ditch resort, and if that's your first go-to, you're in for a host of problems.
Yeah. Do you guys differ in terms of protein recommendations?
No, I think they pretty much in line, but Wade's got a great story around, pushing the amount of protein he took down to a level that was probably suboptimal, but he was able to compete with it. Maybe Wade, you can share that story.
Yeah. So in 2003, doing the Mr. Universe, so I'm competing at around 175 pounds because my weight class ended at 80, so 176 pounds on contest day. So I was eating 250 grams of protein at that time. So when I started working on my digestion and optimizing my digestion, I was like, okay, so we've heard that 1 gram per pound of body weight, roughly. So I went, okay, well, is that true? And I thought, well, it's 1 gram, but is that digested into 1 gram of amino acids? Your state of digestion is going to determine how efficient that system. And we know as we get older, that tends to get more and more compromised. So I began to systematically see how low I could take my protein while maintaining my muscle mass and maintaining an extreme diet. And it took me 4 years to completely figure it out. In 4 years, so in 2007, I went back. So I'm doing the same training. I'm competing at the same level of standards in a very extreme level. I don't have any anabolic agents on that. And I'm only using 85 grams from raw food sources at the time.
Wow.
So it was probably the only guy that ever did a bodybuilding show on a raw food diet at the world stage. So I was like, okay. Now, when I came back last year, at 50, I thought I'd give it another whirl, see how things were. And it's a lot harder at 50 than it is when you're 30. But I found that my sweet spot was between 110, 120 grams of protein. Now, could I got by on 85? I don't really think so at this stage. Maybe that's just overall age and degeneration. My testosterone's not the same as it used to be, 20 years ago. There could be a bunch of different variants inside that. I don't know what those are, but I felt better at about 120.
Okay.
And it's really important to know that when you were doing the 85 grams, there was a lot of mass zymes and against.
That's right. That was the other key. Good point. You have to realize is I'm getting away with this with superior digestive capability to most people can even consider. So when they're getting a recommendation from their nutritionist or their doctor and they're not using our suite of digestive products, okay, they're probably, that's probably an accurate statement. So again, it's the content is only valuable within the context, and the context is determined by all of the parameters that you can do to push, to enhance, or, turn on the gas or turn on the brakes in the various metabolic aspects of the body. And that's what we teach in the book.
Yeah. Matt, do you still, if you work with somebody new, somebody our age who's got to lose 30, 50 pounds, do you still kind of gravitate naturally towards a lower carb or a keto, or does it depend on the person, really?
I think it depends on the person. I mean, we're such big proponents of the psychological side. And I think a very simple psychological question to ask a client is, what type of foods do you love? Like some people are meat lovers, right? Mm-hmm. They could eat a steak every day. Mm-hmm. So if somebody loves steak, very likely that they've got good genetics for ketogenic diet and they could adhere to it. somebody loves salads and they love vegetables and they don't like meat that much, then again, I'd probably push them more towards plant-based diet or a lot more fiber, things like that. So that's a very simple thing. Like I love steak and Wade loves plants. And again, there's probably a biofeedback element to it where we are experience what we feel when we eat these foods is aligned with our genetics. So yeah, I think that's a really key one. But ultimately, I'm going to look at their calories. I'm going to push their protein up because that solves so many problems.
Right.
You know, just increasing protein intake just solves so many things. And you know, Wade touched on it earlier. I also want to know, like, what's their cheat meals? Like, what are they going to try to sneak in? And let's say somebody's ice cream. The cool thing about the processed food world is there's low carb ice creams like Enlighten. There's low calorie ice creams like Halo Top. So I'm going to also give them a strategy around, okay, let's upgrade that meal, that whatever that thing is that you'd like to sneak in, binge on, whatever. And let's try to increase the protein intake of that, or lower calories or lower sugar. You know, for me, I've been on a weight loss journey now for a bit. I'm eating a lot of Quest chips.
Okay.
I mean, the macros are incredible. I think it's 160 calories a bag, 19 grams of protein. I can eat 2 of those. I'm getting 38 grams of protein, 320 calories. And I get that, okay, I'm watching a Netflix series, snacking on something salty experience. So, you know, that's really important as well because, okay, let's nail the main 3-4 meals, but let's make sure that when you want to snack on something or you want to, you know, eat chocolate, ice cream, chips, whatever, let's create something that's going to work for you, that's still going to allow you to be aligned with your diet.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier not demonizing any foods. But obviously that's for a cheat day, right? Like you're just not eating off the rails every day. So
that's right.
Do you guys have strong beliefs on any foods that you say stay away from those? Again, cheat day, whatever. But like artificial sweeteners, gluten, things like that. Are there any things you're like best avoid if you want to feel great?
The dose creates the effect.
Yeah.
You know, like let's take sucralose. So sucralose, you know, got some media. Then if you look at the data that came out on the probiotics. So what came out for this a few years ago. Okay, it's going to make your probiotics more glucose tolerant. You know, it's going to compromise your insulin sensitivity of your probiotics. But they were hyperdosing nonstop for a week, right? I mean, that's what they tend to do in lab experiments, and we do that as well. Like we'll hyperdose. We have cell cultures. And we see if it's cytotoxic or genotoxic, meaning does it kill cells or does it create mutations? Almost everything at the right dose is going to create cell death and genetic mutations, like almost everything. You know, if you're drinking a Coke Zero a week, it's just irrelevant in terms of your health or the consequences. Now, I mean, I think food allergies are something everybody needs to be aware of, but yeah, I don't think there's anything that at the right dose should be completely avoided, Wade.
Yeah, and again, it all comes down to relativity. Most people that are starting out in a diet program are probably going to be better off that if they can restrict as many of these chemical agents because they need to break the addiction cycle. Many of these are very addictive, and they're laced within a lot of foods, and subconsciously they're drawn to things in their diet that aren't that helpful for them because they're actually addicted to the chemicals.
Right.
They were designed to be addictive. They are addictive, and your body has an uncanny way of seeking out in those quiet moments when you're not mentally vigilant to kind of default to the old system. And then there's psychological and emotional stories that are tied to that. And we talk about that, the social, the cultural, the psychological, and emotional are the bottom parts of the nutritional pyramid before you get to your goals, to understand that there are certain habitual patterns that you learned as a kid, social structures. Maybe there's religious doctrines that you are resisting or that you are embracing that determine your sense of self. And then as a person moves up the level of self-awareness on how food impacts them, they're going to find variances outside of data. So Matt's a real data guy. I'm a super intuitive guy. How does this make me feel? Does this make me feel good, or does this make me feel bad? What is it that I just did today that didn't work right? Or did that really affect me as much as people say it did? And most people will go through kind of their resistance to, I don't want to do this, to like, okay, I'm starting to feel better. Now I'm becoming a food Nazi. And I'm attacking everything there is ever. Yeah. And then now I've isolated myself away from all my friends and all my social structures, all my psychological. So I'm going to kind of go off a little bit, but I'm really feeling bad that I'm away from the tribal determination. Yeah. Like I'm sneaking around the corner at 7:00 at night where the dark alley is, because I want to really have this snack that I don't want anybody for me to see. There's that stuff. Then there's the social identification. If I wanted to create an absolute pandemonium on the internet, all I would have to do is just go out somewhere where I would be seen eating a steak. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go out and have a steak. There would be a rip roar. Oh, he's a fake. Right. They had a steak. Well, and people just can't handle that.
Yeah. They lose their minds. Yeah.
Right. Or if whatever advent of someone else, he goes off and someone sees him with a glass of wine or having a piece of dessert. Oh, what a heathen! Throw him under the bus. But really, they're being punitive because they don't want to admit they have these secret pleasures. Yeah. And they want to hammer someone else to protect their own subconscious psychology. So as you get past that, Nazi stage, you kind of work to, okay, I've got this. I can go have a snack, or I can go have this other thing. You kind of get to this hyper-aware stage and this expansive stage where there's now openings for other diet strategies. There's openings for other ideas. They're opening for social occasions and family occasions and all the things that makes human connection, which is so tied to food, so big. And that's what I mean by you get to the point where I think in the transcendence of food places, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. You go beyond diet, you go beyond calories, you go beyond counting, you go beyond data. That's like the transcendence of dietary awareness, that you know exactly what you need to do at any given time, that you're not so rigid that you can't move into a social situation and say, yeah, I'm going to try some of that, or I'll experiment with that, or I'll do that. And you're so confident within yourself that you feel that you can deal with anything. Yeah. And that if you do start to deviate away from where you're like, I want to get back to like that feeling good, looking good type person. And that's where I go. Like every year I go home at Christmas time. And I have parameters of weight gain. So right now I like to stay around 185 pounds. Okay. Now, before I go, I'm going to peel myself down to like 180 because I'm going to put on 10 or 15 pounds in that 2 weeks at home. Right. I'm going to eat mom's bread. Right. I'm going to eat I'm going to have all the little treats. I'm going to go and eat the chocolates at the family member's house and, drink apple cider and eat potato chips with my friends. Now, once we get past that phase, Wade's going to be 195. That's the alarm bell. So it's just like, got a little roll hanging over my jeans here. Yeah. The abs have turned to flabs. Better dial it in. And I'm going to come out of that. My metabolism is going to be cooking. Sure. My social feeling is going to be feeling great. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming back after that show like a savage because I've just paid all my dopamine loops. I've paid off all my psychological and emotional credit cards. Yeah. And I've got a lot of burn rate. And, I'll probably push for 3, 4, 5 months on like a cyborg-like diet, and get into great and like superior condition because I want to do that. I'm excited to do some running again and do some hardcore training again and go really hard. And then then take my foot off the gas next summer. Yeah.
So you alluded to something there in a variety of ways. And my friend, I don't know if you guys know Dr. Chris Moore. He said one time it's better to eat a pizza with friends than a salad alone. You're talking about community and things like that. And that's my other good friend, Sean Stevenson, just told me about a study where people that ate with people that they love 3 times a week had a massive reduction in all-cause mortality. So, in our world, we always get caught up in like micros and macros and protein and this and that. But talk about like the importance of just eating with friends and being present and not just staring at your phone and stressed out when you're eating. Like that's a major concern.
Well, that's why we're harping on the fact there's no evil foods.
Yeah.
Because, what's the stress response if you're, again, spending an hour a day getting caught up into whatever the latest evil food is? Again, it's oats, it's kale.
Right.
You're going to piss oxalate, kidney stones. Like,
Yeah.
it's just relentless, right?
Yeah.
Every week somebody's
Health
making...
terrorists.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
so, and think about the average person. Like, we're knowledgeable enough to kind of, parry that stuff. But for the average person that doesn't know much, and that's their education, they go to the grocery store and like, what do I eat?
Yeah.
What do I buy? So I think they're doing a disservice on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
And like you said, I mean, I'm a foodie. I love going to great restaurants with friends. It's just one of the highlights. I had sushi last night with my brother. He was in town. These are just special experiences that I'm not going to miss out on.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. I look at the whole dietary paradigm as mixed metabolic arts. There are a lot of different ways to optimize your metabolism. There's a lot of different diet strategies you can use. There's a lot of different experts that advocate. I'm hoping that people get encouraged to find someone that they have that accountability with, that can help them defend off, the psychological invaders that are disrupting them and destroying their confidence so that they can stay in something long enough.
Yep.
And you've built a cult-like following essentially because you're able to produce outstanding results for people who've really struggled for a long time and are motivated. And you're doing a lot of things that are counter-narrative.
Right.
They're counter-narrative, but they work because you understand why they work, how they work, and that allows that person to confidently go through life and stick with it long enough that they produce the results that they want and start building, metabolic momentum. And there's nothing like metabolic momentum. When you start figuring that thing, then you just lose that few pounds and you're seeing the changes each week and you're getting stronger and you're feeling healthier. You're waking up fresher. You're sleeping better. Your sex drive's going up. All those wonderful magic things that they sell everything with, when they start happening for you, it's awesome. And I've never lost sight of that. Like, we've coached thousands and thousands of people, and you can relate to this. There's no amount of money, there's no amount of acclamation from the world that can make me feel better than when I hear or see someone who used the product, used a strategy, read her book, did whatever, and said, hey, that made a difference in my life. The joy and connection I feel, and I think we're hardwired as humans to feel that connection. And we've lost that in the digital world. We're just buried with division. Everybody's at war with each other. Everybody there's only one race. It's the human race. And we've got a problem of civilization, and the technological advances of civilization are leading to obesity. They're leading to depression. They're leading to a sense of hopelessness. It's crushing testosterone levels. It's crushing our reproductive rates. It's crushing our society. So we're all on a mission to change that. And that's what we're doing. We're changing that. We're providing the tools for that. And it's exciting times. It's really exciting times. We're really excited about the book. We're excited about so many different things to share these ideas to help people make that next step in their life and get that metabolism and get that momentum in their metabolism. And then they become an unstoppable force.
Yeah. Amazing. I love it. Anything you want to add to that?
No, it was a strong close.
I know, it really was.
No, it's great. Thanks for having us on. And it's always fun talking to somebody who's been around for a long time and deep in the rabbit hole. So, yeah, it was great questions. And check out the book. I think we have a discount code.
Yep, we do.
ultimatenutritionsystem.com/J.
Yep.
10% off. We also filmed the entire book. We spent a week in Hollywood.
Wow.
Yeah, that was 6 days nonstop. Long days.
You filmed the entire book. What do you mean?
Like, Wade and I are talking on camera, going through every chapter in the book.
Wow.
So if people prefer a video course version, you can get that.
Very cool.
And then when you go to ultimatenutritionsystem.com/J and you buy the whole bundle, you're going to get the video course, the book, 3 different cookbooks, a plant-based cookbook, a paleo cookbook, and a superfood cookbook, a carnivore cookbook. You're going to get a supplement guide. So the original draft of the book was double that size. So we had to take out the supplement chapter that's 200 plus pages. And then for the science nerds, we have 875 scientific references in the book. We created a summary of every scientific reference and put that in another book.
Wow.
So that's a PDF people can download. So you get all of that for a really good price on ultimatenutritionsystem.com/J.
Yes. Awesome. Thanks so much, guys.